At CES, I noted that the new Aorus 15 gaming laptop appeared to have some nice cooling, so let's test it out and see just how hot it gets. I'll be taking a detailed look at thermals and overclocking, and seeing how much we can improve performance by undervolting and tweaking fan speed. I've got the Aorus 15 W9, which means there's an Intel i7-8750H CPU and NVIDIA RTX 2060 graphics. However, the 15X9 model is also available with RTX 2070 graphics, so expect different results with that one. On the bottom of the laptop, we can see we've got quite a large air intake vent, which is great to see. The rubber feet also seem to be angled such that they block the hot air being exhausted from coming straight back into the fans, so air should only be pulled in from the front. There are also quite a few heat pipes here, and some are shared between the processor and graphics, so a change in one component will affect the other. For instance, if the CPU gets hot, the graphics will be affected as a result. I'll also briefly talk about Gigabyte's new AI feature that comes with their new RTX laptops. There are two modes, AI Edge and AI Cloud. AI Edge processes the data locally to make the best decisions in terms of what to change, like fan speeds, power limits, and clock speeds, while the AI Cloud setting will send data to Microsoft and get the best settings for the workload based on other user-submitted data, so I'm expecting it to perform better. Otherwise, all other tests had the AI disabled, unless stated otherwise. Thermal testing was completed with an ambient room temperature of 24 degrees Celsius. There's a lot of data here. CPU temperatures are shown by the blue bars, and GPU temperatures are shown by the green bars. The gaming tests towards the bottom were tested by playing Watch Dogs 2, as I find it to use a good amount of combined processor and graphics resources, while the stress tests were tested by running the Ada64 stress test and the Heaven benchmark at the same time in order to attempt to fully load the system. The idle temperatures are a little warm at the bottom of the graph, however the fans were basically silent. The temperatures aren't too hot in gaming once you increase the fan speed or undervolt the CPU. I'm using a -0.15 volt undervolt on the CPU, as denoted by UV on the graph, while the GPU overclock, listed by OC, was a plus 150 MHz to the GPU core. In this case, I also wasn't seeing much of a difference between gaming at stock or with the AI features. At the top of the graph, once I started using a cooling pad, I saw fairly big improvements to temperatures. It seems to be making a larger difference because of the big opening on the bottom of the laptop, which assists with airflow. These are the average clock speeds for the same tests just shown. Overall, the results were pretty good. While there was CPU throttling without the undervolt, the clock speeds aren't too low, even while under stress test. With the stress tests running and the laptop at stock, there was both thermal and power limit throttling. As we saw in the last graph, this test got the CPU to the hottest point of 96 degrees Celsius. However, the thermal throttling could be removed by maxing out the fan. The default 52 watt TDP limit was now being hit, resulting in power limit throttling. However, as we can see with the undervolt applied, we're able to get the full 3.9 GHz all-core turbo speed of the i7-8750H even in this worst case scenario. Impressive stuff. It was also possible to boost the power limit up to 62 watts manually with Intel XTU. However, that would also have raised the temperatures, so I didn't take that route and instead went with undervolting. These are the clock speeds I got while just running CPU-only stress tests, without any GPU load. Despite there being less load on the system, as the graphics are not contributing heat into the system or drawing as much power as before, the clock speeds are about the same as with the CPU and GPU stress test running. With the undervolt applied, it was possible to get the full performance from this test and remove the power limit throttling. These are the temperatures from these CPU-only tests. With the undervolt, the temperature dropped by 5 degrees Celsius, while also giving us better performance. To demonstrate how this translates into performance, I've got some Cinebench CPU benchmarks here. There's basically no difference in single core, as that's not enough to trigger throttling. However, in the multi-core test, we can see a nice improvement once undervolting the CPU, as this helps alleviate the power limit throttling. Again, I could have boosted the TDP limit instead to achieve this, but then it would have run hotter. Here are the GPU-only clock speeds while under a graphical-only stress test, as well as the improvements seen by applying a 150 MHz overclock to the core with MSI Afterburner. The overclock resulted in a small temperature change of 1 degree Celsius, although there was power limit throttling in both tests. So how does this performance boost actually translate into games? I've tested with the exact same Windows, Nvidia, and game updates installed. The only changes are the ones listed here. Far Cry 5 was tested using the built-in benchmark at 1080p with ultra settings. Down the bottom at stock and with the fan at default or max, there was no real difference, as there wasn't thermal throttling here. With the AI settings, there was a fair improvement to 1% low results, but only a small increase to average FPS. Finally at the top, with my custom manual settings, I was able to get the highest average FPS. So the AI settings did improve performance over stock, but if you know what you're doing, you can extract extra performance. The Aorus Control Center software has some options to help improve performance easily too, without the need for other third-party tools. For instance, by setting the graphics to 1, we get a 100 MHz boost to the GPU core and a 160 MHz boost to the GPU memory, while the different settings for the CPU will adjust the power limit. No undervolting appears to happen. However, by default, the CPU TDP was 52 watts on the third setting, which is where I've done all my testing. By setting it to the highest setting, it boosted to 57 watts. Setting it to 2 puts the CPU TDP to 45 watts, as per the Intel spec for the 8750H, while 1 lowers this further to 38 watts, and 0 drops it all the way to 30 watts. So less performance, but could be worth changing when on battery power to make it last longer. As for the external temperatures where you'll actually be putting your hands, at idle it got to the mid-30s in the center, about average. While gaming it was in the low 40s, while the WASD keys were quite cool comparatively, then slightly cooler under stress tests. Which makes sense as there was some CPU throttling in Watch Dogs 2, more on that in a moment. While gaming on battery power, the wrist rest area got hotter than before, with the hotspot on the left exactly where the battery is located. As for the fan noise produced by the laptop, I'll let you have a listen to some of these tests. At idle, it was completely silent. While gaming or under stress test with the fans on default speeds, it was fairly loud, above average when compared to many other laptops on max speed. When you manually boost the fans though, it gets very loud. Both fans spin up to 7200 RPM, but as we've seen before, this can improve the cooling a fair bit, so it's nice to have as an option. While the gaming performance seems pretty good, there was some current limit throttling in some of the CPU heavy games, not something I usually see. I think this points to the 180 watt power brick not being adequate enough, at least with some of the more CPU heavy games. We can see an example here. While just driving around in Watch Dogs 2, the TDP dips to 25 watts at times, which lowers frame rate performance. And this seems to be why some games in my gaming tests have lower 1% low results than expected. Overall, the temperatures seemed reasonable. Still a little warm on the CPU at times though, considering how much of an opening we've got down the bottom and how loud the fans can get, although as we saw, we could really take advantage of this with the cooling pad. The power limit throttling in some CPU heavy games was a bit strange. I would have thought the 180 watt brick would be enough. Given the other 2060 laptop I've tested with the same i7 CPU also had a 180 watt power brick, and I didn't see these issues there. And I don't have any other larger bricks at the moment to test with to rule the issue out. The battery doesn't drain at all though while plugged into power, the performance just lowers instead. These differences in performance shown aren't hard and fast rules. There are different factors which will vary results. Primarily the temperature of the room you're running in, application of thermal paste, and even the specific hardware, which comes down to the silicon lottery. You may not be able to undervolt or overclock your hardware the same as me. It depends on the chip and its specific power requirements. So don't just blindly copy my settings and do some testing to find out where your stable point is for best results. It may be possible to further improve temperatures by swapping the thermal paste. However, as this is a review unit that I have to send back, I'm not able to change the paste. Otherwise, the next reviewer will unknowingly report different results due to what I've done. Undervolting, raising the fan speed, or even just using a cooling pad to improve airflow is much easier for most people to do. And as we've seen, it did improve performance in the Aorus 15. Let me know how much of a performance boost you found by undervolting your hardware, and what you thought of the improvements here. And don't forget to subscribe for the full review of the Aorus 15 gaming laptop, as well as future tech videos like this one.